What's up guys, today it's Aquino back with another video. We're going to be responding to the LPT. We're going to get over what this means and all these things. So the LPT, guys, is a very requested video from my audience, and I'm going to be responding to it. So LPT just stands for Logical Problem of the Trinity. The Trinity is obviously, like in my last video I explained, there are three opposed real relations that are identical to the same essence. So the three distinct persons that are identical to the same essence, same nature. Okay, we gotta get that clear. They're identical to the same thing, which is their nature, but distinct in personhood. Now, this is the problem or challenge of the Muslims. Not just Muslims, but I like to say it's because they're the ones that are popularly running the argument. Okay, so let's go through it. It says the argument that Muslims pose is this: premise 1, the Father is God. So what you will notice is that all of the persons of the Trinity will be this. They'll be identical to this, okay? And they're going to try and pose a problem of identity here. So premise 1, the Father is God. Premise 2, the Son is God. Premise 3, the Holy Spirit is God. Conclusion, the three persons are fully God. Yes. Premise 4, the Father isn't the Son. Premise 5, the Son isn't the Holy Spirit. And premise 6, the Holy Spirit isn't the Father. Conclusion 2, the three persons are not each other. Yes. So this means that they're identical to the same nature. So if A is identical to G and B is identical to G, they must be the same letter. But that would fall into modalism. So we obviously say no. Why? Because we distinguish the persons. So they're going to be like, yeah, that's the problem. Because you distinguish them, that's the logical problem of the Trinity. They're identical to the same thing, yet identical. Right? That's what they're going to pose. So St. Thomas Aquinas responds in the Summa Theologiae, and this is kind of what they're proposing here. Objection 1: it would seem that the divine relations, which are the persons, when you see the scholastics or a Catholic theologian talking about relations in God, that just means the persons. So Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So it would seem that the divine relations are not really distinguished from one another or from each other. For things which are identified with the same are identified with each other. But every relation in God is really the same as a divine essence. Remember, because the relations are identical to the divine essence. That's why they're God. Therefore, the relations are not really distinguished from each other. That's the LPT in a sort of way. Okay. Now, St. Thomas Aquinas, the angelic doctor, reply to objection 1. He refutes this really ridiculous objection, and he says, according to the philosopher, this argument holds that whatever things are identified with the same thing are identified with each other. But St. Thomas is thinking in this way that they have to be identified in every way, shape, and form, which is not the case with the Trinity, and I'll show you guys why in a minute. If the identity be real and logical, okay, so materially and formally, okay, and I'll get into what this means in a minute. As for instance, and then he gives an example, a tunic and a garment. Notice the example he gave. But not if they differ logically. Hence, in the same place, he says that although action, pay attention guys, is the same as motion, and likewise passion, still it does not follow that action and passion are the same. Because action implies reference as of something from which there is motion in the same thing moved, whereas passion implies reference as of something which is from another. Likewise, although paternity, just as filiation, paternity in Latin, guys, just means the father, because padre in Spanish, similarly in Latin, it just means pater, paternity, which is the father. Just as filiation in Latin means the sonship. Okay, so being the son of the Father, this is Jesus Christ, okay? The Father in Jesus Christ is really the same as the divine essence. In other words, the divine relations that oppose each other are really the same as the divine essence. Nevertheless, these two, in their own proper idea and definitions, import opposite respects. Why? Because filiation and paternity differ. Hence, they are distinguished from each other. So, if you still don't understand the objection, we're going to go to something else that proposes a response, okay? So, another brief refutation of the LPT, or logical problem of the Trinity. So, we'll take this from this specific text, and we're going to read this. So, the Father is the divine essence. The Son is the divine essence. Therefore, the Father is the Son. The reasoning seems valid, right? Well, no, it's actually not. Because this is only true if the persons were both materially and formally identical. There's two types of identity here that we're going to be talking about, guys. We're going to be talking about material identity and formal identity. And these analytical Muslims might be like, oh, what about absolute and relative identity? Guys, we don't talk about things that the scholastics didn't. Who cares what these people have to say, right? So we don't have to appeal to this notion of analytical philosophy, right? I'm not saying analytical philosophy is bad. I'm just saying stick to the scholastic tradition. Our scholastics talked about two types of identity in this situation: material identity and formal identity. Stick to that. They can't refute it. Anyways, with the divine essence explanation, we're going to see what material identity is now. Material identity is identity in entity or reality. You might be confused. Well, let me keep reading. Therefore, things which are really distinct are materially distinct. Okay? But the Father and the Son are not really distinct from that third entity or thing, which is, namely, the divine essence. So, I'll give you an example of material identity, okay? Let's say you and a dog are together. You guys are materially distinct because your identity in entity and reality is not the same as theirs. Your nature is not the same as theirs. This material identity differs, okay? Let me think. So, with this being said, the Father and the Son don't differ by material identity. They're not distinguished by way of their nature, by way of their what they materially are and their identity, right? So they're identical to it. That's why the third thing is namely the divine essence. On the other hand, formal identity is identity in the same proper nature, okay, or in the same definition. Therefore, things are formally distinct, which are distinct according to their nature or definitions. Now, you might be thinking, what's an example of formal identity? Well, we're going to give an example. Example: man is a rational animal. So you guys that are watching me right now are rational animals. Keep that in mind. You're an animal and you're rational, okay? There is no formal identity. Pay attention. Rejecting this notion. There is no formal identity between animal and rational, because the definition of animal is different from the definition of rational. They're not the same. But there is material identity in this case, because man is an animal and rational by the same entity or nature. Do you guys see how material identity is applied here? So rationality and animality do have the same material identity in you, in man, in human beings, us. But outside of that, rationality is not animality, nor animality is rationality. We can see this as an example of, for example, a dog. That just has animality, sorry. It doesn't have rationality. So it doesn't necessarily follow that you have both of them. But the concept of paternity and filiation differ from the divine essence likewise. Here's the same example. For one is relative, the other is absolute. Hence, there is a diversity of notions in God, okay? But not a diversity of distinct realities or entities. Again, referring back to material identity. For this reason, St. Thomas says that this maxim is true only if they're identical to the third thing, both in reality and in concept, but not if they differ, or not if they're identical, only in reality, yet diverse in concept or notion. So what he's trying to say here, guys, is that the LPT only works if the persons of the Trinity are both materially and formally identical to the divine essence, but they're not. Therefore, the LPT fails because they're not identical, or sorry, they're identical to the Trinity materially, but they're formally distinct from the essence. Okay? Now, we're going to see this in reference to what St. Thomas said earlier, right? So it's the same thing. According to the philosopher, this argument holds that whatever things are identified with the same thing are identified with each other. If the identity be real and logical, as for instance, a tunic and a garment, but not if they differ logically, okay? And then he gives an example of this. Hence, in the same place, he says that although action is the same as motion, action is materially identical to motion. And likewise, passion is also materially identical to motion. Still, it does not follow that action and passion are the same, because action implies reference as of something from which there is motion in the thing moved, whereas passion implies reference as of something which is from another. Likewise, although paternity, just as filiation, is really the same as a divine essence, nevertheless, these two, in their own proper idea and definitions, import opposite respects. Hence, they are distinguished from each other. Do you see how St. Thomas refutes this? Now, What does this mean, right? So thus, since the persons are really the same as a divine essence, but not the same notionally or in concept, they're not synonymous terms or concepts. Hence, the formal concepts of paternity and filiation oppose each other, which which suffices for a real distinction. What we've been saying this whole time. And since the opposites cannot be identified, and the paternity and filiation imply opposition, they're really distinguished from this. We cannot conclude that the Aristotelian maxim is verified. Sorry, I read that wrong. From this, we can conclude that the Aristotelian maxim is verified in the divine realm as well. But what opponents miss is material and formal identity, which I've been emphasizing this whole time. And then we go by this Father Emmanuel Doronzo. So this is a scholastic manual. Last of the scholastic manual writers respond to this objection in the Theologia Dogmatica, Volume 2, in the following manner. So this is in Latin, this is the English translation. We can read that too. Things which are the same with a third thing in reality and in concept, either adequately, convertibly, or in every way, and under every respect, like I said, materially and formally, are the same with each other, I concede. Okay, things which are the same with a third thing in reality, but not in concept, meaning formally distinct, okay, but materially identical, either inadequately or non-convertibly, or not in every way and under the same respect, are necessarily the same with each other, I deny. However, the divine persons are the same as the essence in reality, but not in concept, okay, as there is a distinction of minor reason between them, which is founded on the opposing notions of absolute and relative. Okay, that's very important. This reasoning seems to be favored by St. Thomas, who presents it in both the Prima Pars, question 28, article 3, and in other places frequently, De Potentia, and all the sources right there. So from this we can conclude that the LPT has been refuted, and it's just a dumb objection. So remember, guys, you have to distinguish between material identity and formal identity, and that's how the scholastic thought about it. Okay, I know John of St. Thomas writes something about this too and agrees with everything we're saying. So yeah, this is just a refutation of the dumb LPT, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave comments down below and ask me questions whenever you guys need to. God bless you guys.